Unlike young adult literature, most authors set out to write a middle grade novel. They know from the beginning that their story is for kids. If this is you, there are a couple of points you need to make sure you hit. So, today I want to talk about how to write middle grade stories kids want to read. In a nutshell, your kid characters should take center stage. Your language and sentence structure should be accessible. And any lessons that you're trying to teach need to take a back seat. It's not about the lesson, it's about the story for kids. This is Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers, because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and writer. Let's start by defining middle grade literature. Middle grade literature is a story written for children roughly 9 to 12. Sometimes it'll appeal to early teens, but not every story is going to do that. If you're writing middle grade, remember that kids read up. That means an 11-year-old is not going to read a book about a 9-year-old. This is why a lot of middle grade books tend to have protagonists who are closer to pre-teens or early teens than are closer to 8 or 9. Also remember that middle grade is just an age category. It is not a genre. So not every kid is going to want to read every middle grade novel. Some kids like action-adventure middle grade novels. Some like horror. Some like fantasy. So be aware that your book is going to be classified as middle grade fantasy or middle grade some other genre. It's as simple as that. A middle grade novel is written for kids 9 to 12. Next, I want to talk about letting your middle grade kid characters take center stage. If you're writing middle grade, the most important thing you need to remember is who you're writing for and why they are reading. Kids are reading to be entertained. They want to read stories that are about other kids, where people like them are making their own choices. They're the heroes or heroines of their own story. They are the people who have agency. When you write about kid characters who have agency, you're giving that to your readers as well. F.T. Bradley does this really well in her book, Double Vision. She allows her main character, Lincoln, to make his own decisions, his own mistakes, and his own triumphs. He is never overshadowed by an older character, especially an adult. Here's an example. The class was leaving. I watched Mrs. Valdez pass by the little window and walk to the field. She clapped her hands, then said something I couldn't make out. I had to go back. I started toward the barn doors, but then I saw that lever again. If only I had walked away and joined my class, the rest of this adventure never would have happened. But that lever was just asking to be pushed, right? I went over there and pushed it, sending a cloud of white feathers swirling around the barn like a tornado. Whack! The cackling was so loud, I swore it nearly broke my eardrums before I hurried out through the barn doors. In this scene, Lincoln is emphasizing with cruelly caged chickens, like a lot of kids would do. Because of this, when he sees an opportunity to free those chickens, he takes it. He pulls the lever. For the rest of the novel, he faces the consequences of these actions and continues to make his own decisions. Lincoln does not get put in timeout for the rest of the book or wallow in self-pity. He is an active character, and your middle grade kid characters need to be active as well. One way to do this is to try and view the story and the world through your kid characters' eyes, through their perspective. This is why a lot of middle grade tends to be written in third-person close or first-person points of view. These points of view lend themselves to sinking into one character's perspective really well. Another way to make sure your kid characters are taking center stage is to in some way make the parents and other adults useless. This could be because they're not around much, they're busy, they could just not believe your kid characters and not understand what's going on, or in some other way they're unable to swoop in and save the day. Kids want to read about other kids facing their fears and making their own decisions and overcoming those obstacles. When kids read about other kids doing this, they learn that they can face their own fears and that they can make decisions in their own life. In essence, you are teaching your kid readers how to be capable and giving them self-confidence. That's kind of a big deal. Don't take that lightly. Embrace that aspect of middle grade literature. Embrace the fact that you are teaching children how to face their fears, how they can face some things on their own, and sometimes they may need to ask for help. That lesson is a part of most middle grade novels, and it's one that many adults could stand to learn as well. Next, I want to talk about how middle grade readers are smart but learning. Reading is not easy. Middle grade readers are still learning how to decipher different sentence structures, what to do with complex characterization and plots. So be conscious of this when you are crafting your story, and be aware of which type of middle grade reader you are writing for. F.T. Bradley in Double Vision is writing for what we call reluctant readers. These are kids who might have a learning disability or some other reason to have trouble reading, or they're kids who just don't like it very much and are kind of forced to do this. Because they find reading difficult, Bradley makes sure her story is an easy read and it's fast-paced to keep them interested. Not all middle grade books fall into that category. I loved Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book, but it is more complex. The concepts and the words that it's using are a higher reading level, so it's not going to appeal to these reluctant readers. That doesn't mean it's a bad book. It's just appealing to two different types of middle grade readers. Here's an example of what I mean by The Graveyard Book is more advanced and might not appeal to all middle grade readers. "What I saw," said Bod, "is that you agreed to do a favor for your niece and frighten a kid she's been fighting with at school. So you arrested me without a warrant for being out late. And then when my dad runs out into the road to try and stop you, or to find out what was going on, you intentionally ran him over." "It was an accident," repeated Simon. "You've been fighting with Mo at school?" said Mo's Uncle Tam, but he didn't sound convincing. First, I want to note that at this point in the story, readers are well aware that Bod's dad is fine. He isn't actually dead, and he wasn't really run over in the conventional sense. The language and concepts Gaiman is using in this excerpt are more advanced. They are concepts that middle grade readers are perfectly capable of understanding. They're just more difficult than the ones Bradley is focusing on. So you need to think about which type of middle grade reader you're writing for. Other things to consider when you're writing middle grade are horror should be outlandish and, for the most part, impossible. Middle grade readers don't want to read about horror that could be real and happening in their lives. They don't want to read about realistic violence. They also don't want to read about adult concepts or sexual content. That's just outside the scope of most middle grade readers' experience and desires. At the same time, you don't want to write about realistic horror because you don't want to be responsible for nightmares and get lots of angry letters from parents. So think about that too. That doesn't mean that middle grade readers aren't capable of understanding those things. It just means that's not what they're looking for in their entertainment. Regardless of which type of reader you're writing for, strive to use words with less syllables and shorter sentences. You don't want to make reading a chore. If reading starts to feel like work, your middle grade reader is going to pick someone else's book to read. You don't want that to happen. Using simpler words and sentences will also keep your story moving. It'll keep your pace up. Everyone has short attention spans in today's world. Kids are definitely included in that. So the faster pace you can create, the more likely a reader is to choose your middle grade book. Next, I want to share an editor's suggestions for writing middle grade. There are 2 mistakes I see a lot of new middle grade authors making. The first is writing about your youth as if it was modern day. The second is writing to deliver a message more than writing to deliver a story. When you write solely from your memory of being a kid instead of researching what it's like to be a child today, you're going to use outdated slang, and you're also going to miss the effect that technology has on children today. I didn't grow up with technology like kids do now. Most of you probably didn't either. So it's hard for us to grasp how much of an impact that really has in their daily lives. And if that technology is missing, your story is going to read as false. Now, you can always set your story in whatever time period you grew up in, but know that that is making your middle grade novel historical fiction. Not all middle grade readers are interested in reading that. However, that doesn't mean you can't draw on your personal experience in your middle grade books. You just need to pull that experience into modern times. So, read middle grade. Read the genre of middle grade you are or want to write, and soak up what's selling well now. Look at the slang those authors might be using. Look at how they're using technology in their books. And ask yourself how you can apply those to your own story. You can still use your experience. You just need to modernize it. Now, when it comes to delivering a lesson to middle grade readers, remember, no one likes to be preached at. Adults don't like it, teens don't like it, kids really don't like it. They can smell a thinly disguised lesson a mile away. So if you're writing just to teach kids something, you're probably not going to sell very well. The story should come first. The message should come second. What that means is you should deliver a good story that happens to also have a lesson, not a lesson that happens to have a story that goes along with it. Your focus should be the story. So remember, when you're writing middle grade, that your kid characters need to take center stage, that your readers are still learning how to read, and that it's not about your experience or the lesson. How do you approach writing middle grade? Share your process in the comments below. And for more videos on middle grade literature and other categories of literature, subscribe to Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers. Because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and writer. To find out more about me, go to www.ignitedinkwriting.com. There you will also find a young adult worksheet that will help you write a YA story. And now it's your turn to make sure your kid characters are front and center and your language is easy to understand and modern to ignite your ink.